pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now is the time for a public comment period. Persons may speak on any item that is not listed on the agenda. Speakers are requested to fill out a speaker card and to state their name and address before addressing the board. Individual speakers are asked to limit their comments for an item to no more than 3 minutes in order to allow everyone who wishes to speak the opportunity to do so. Groups are asked to limit their comments to a total of 10 minutes. The board shall limit the total time of public comments to 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. If additional time is needed, public comment will continue after discussion items. Charles Shannon?
Charles Shannon, President, Secretary, Teacher at Glorietta School. I just want to take this opportunity to thank everybody in this district for all the support. With 4 schools getting distinguished school recognition, I think it goes to show that there's a lot of great things working in this district, and I want to acknowledge that. It takes our teachers, our staff, our district directors, superintendent, and our important board to ensure that we're focused and do the work that needs to be done, do the best that we can for our students. And we did the right thing, and I really am honored to be a part of this district and do the kind of things that we do for children. So thank you, appreciate it.
I don't see any speaker cards. So we will now move on to our recognitions, employees of the month. So first of all, we have Susan Barnett from Glorietta Instructional Assistant. So this month we honor Susan Barnett as the district's classified employee of the month. Susan is an experienced instructional assistant and the leading literacy intervention provider at Glorietta Elementary School. During recent staffing changes in the classroom that she served, Susan provided valuable stability and assistance. She facilitated classroom routines, orchestrated daily activities, invigorated students, and supported parents as well. Beyond the classroom, she helps emerging leaders expand their knowledge and develop foundational skills. Her vast knowledge, commitment, and dedication continues to make a difference in supporting and enriching student learning.
And you should hear the story. I hired her from Starbucks at Broadway Plaza. That's how she found out about Orinda. Hi, Sue. We love you, Sue.
And then our certificated employee of the month, Rebecca Wilson, Delray kindergarten teacher. Rebecca Wilson enriches the lives of kindergarten students at Delray, shaping them into independent and confident students. Rebecca is actively involved in all aspects of the school and district, representing her colleagues on district curriculum work, hosting New York trainers, and recreating kindergarten welcome routine. Beyond that, she works to create a visual continuum of the writing project from kindergarten to 5th grade to demonstrate the power of the work and show the changes over the grade levels for our distinguished school validation visit. She willingly shares her skills with others, and we are lucky to have her at Delray.
Thank you.
Sorry, you're a Starbucks story.
We have a better story, awesome.
Oh, yeah.
We could tell lots of stories.
Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. Items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine or acted upon by the Board of Trustees in one motion. There is no discussion of these items before the board vote unless a member of the board, staff, or public requests specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar. It is understood that the administration recommends approval on all consent items. Each item on the consent calendar approved by the board shall be deemed to have been considered in full and adopted as recommended. So,
I move that we adopt the consent calendar as written. I would like to ask to pull 2 items.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask to pull item A and item E, please.
Item E, minutes, and item E, monthly budget and evaluation updates.
Yes.
We will move those to the end of the action items. So after action item E, we'll move those consent items.
Make a motion, we approve the consent calendar, pulling items A and E and moving into the end of the action items.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That was unanimous. Next, we will move to action item A, declaration of fully qualified educators.
All right, well, good evening. This first item is called the Declaration of Need, and this tends to be an annual declaration, and in summary, it basically permits the district to hire teachers who may be in the process of completing coursework for their CLAD or the Resource Specialist certification. Currently, all teachers in the district are compliant with CLAD. Special education teachers in the district are also all compliant with Resource Specialist certification. This declaration of need may come into play when we hire new teachers, as we expect to hire a small number of teachers this year to replace retiring teachers or those who have resigned, as well as filling teachers on leave of absence assignments, so they come in as temp teachers. By approving this declaration of need, the district would be authorized to hire teachers who are in the process of completing their CLAD or their RSP certification. Do you have any questions?
Questions?
So, I understand we're in compliance right now, and I'm just trying to understand why wouldn't we do this? I mean, or why would we? I mean, it feels like we're kind of doing it because we've done it before, but at the same time, if we want folks who are all CLAD, certificated, basically meet all the criteria and aren't in process, what would hurt us when we pursue new folks? Superintendent, we're looking for folks who already have all these things anyway.
So, yeah, good question. It really is a safeguard. If we have a candidate who's a superb candidate and they're in the process of completing it, when we hire them, we would like to be able to complete that process with them.
And we can't do that on a one-off basis at any other time or consideration.
And what do you mean one-off basis?
Well, I mean, if that individual arises and that need arises and that comes together, does the district have an option at that point to do anything differently?
So
if they didn't have this in place?
We would not have another option because we want to have fully qualified teachers in place.
And you can only do this
through this process.
one time a year?
Correct. So this is in anticipation of next year. In working with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, it allows us to hire teachers who we find as rock stars or superb to be in place when the school year starts with the correct authorization. And as I said, currently we don't have the teachers at the current time. The same thing with resource specialists. However, retirements, unforeseen events happen in people's lives, and it allows us to fill a position with a fully qualified teacher.
I have a question related to that. On this one page, 73, it mentions estimated number needed 5 and then 3. So
generous numbers.
Okay, so that isn't for specific positions, it's just your estimate of...
Correct. Worst case scenario, something were to happen, we would have allocation of 5 for the CLAD and 3 for the resource specialist.
I still am not entirely sure why we wouldn't want to just hire a teacher who already had the, whatever it is, instead of having to have this permit. We may currently have a teacher that we, as I said, find as a superb candidate. They're working for us perhaps this is a hypothetical situation, as a temporary teacher. We have a possibility of perhaps bringing them on next year, and they're in the process of acquiring the certification. Would we want to let that teacher go?
because we don't have this and we want to find a CLAD teacher. That's the dilemma that we face. And so this allows us to have that teacher in place, continuing as a great teacher for us, and also receive the certification in anticipation of that following year.
And so is it implied that there aren't lots of other teachers that do have the CLAD?
All the teachers are CLAD certified.
I mean, the ones that would be applying, or is it just depends?
It takes on a number of different forms. Teachers may come in from out of state, so they need to apply for that. They're veteran teachers that don't have the California certification. Those unique situations. And we're such a small district that sometimes we encounter those unique situations. It really safeguards us and allows us to continue to employ qualified teachers.
Do our neighboring districts do this? Is this pretty routine, like in Moraga and Lafayette and other places?
I don't think we've checked.
I haven't checked it. It is a common practice.
I mean, I know that the requirement for CLAD and RSP, that's,
Right.
it's just a flexibility issue. Okay.
Any other questions from this? Any public comments on this item?
Charles Shannon, President. I'm aware of this happening in other districts, and just like Brian was saying, there are times when you recognize a superstar, you can provide continuity, they're known in the community, and it's a safe bet. And in some cases, well, when this happens, it works out in favor of the district. So as an OEA president, I do support having this certification process. I've seen how it can really work for districts. I haven't seen it not work. So that's my recommendation.
Further comments from the public on this item? Further discussion from the board? If not, a motion to proceed.
Move that we approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passed and unanimous. Next action item B, Orinda Union School District and Moraga School District Joint Employee Agreement Director of Technology. Dr. Now.
Thank you. So this item was brought to you at our last board meeting for discussion. And at that time, we looked at a proposed agreement which is very similar to the one that's before you right now. There were some ongoing discussions at the last time of our last board meeting with the Moraga District, and I mentioned that there was a potential of some small changes, and you see those reflected in this agreement. Again, this agreement is to establish a Director of Technology position to be shared between both districts. It is a 60% position for Orinda and 40% for Moraga. Orinda would be the technically employing agency because of the added percentage. You can see that a couple of the changes were basically one, allowing a statement to be put in there regarding the director participating in Orinda Moraga New Employees Orientation Programs. And the next one is a percentage change in the indirect cost charge, which would be assessed to the Moraga School District for the administrative costs associated with us being the employer. And at that time I mentioned to you there was still discussions underway on the percentage. So at this point we have agreed to a 5.55% indirect cost charge, which is still very fair. The next one was listing of some technology, like cell phones, laptops, and that sort of thing that the Orinda district would provide for the director's use. And the reimbursements of that necessary for the Moraga district. So they requested a line to validate that part. I believe those were, there's one other emphasize the timelines necessary for Moraga and basically our district to work together in the event that we did not renew the employment agreement. Legal counsel has reviewed this agreement. Continuing on to the next page, 79, they worked with our, we worked with our insurance carriers, and then they ratified that we needed to have this language in here regarding maintaining the liability insurance for both districts, which we would do, both districts would be doing anyway, but so this is the specific language to ensure that we do that. And that, I think those are the extent of the change. So we are prepared, as well as Moraga District, which I believe is meeting tomorrow night, to move forward with this pending your approval.
Thank you, Dr. Beckman. Questions?
Just a comment. I just want to thank you, Joe, for your work on this. You know, we've heard loud and clear, you know, technology, in my 5 years on the board, technology has been something that's been really tough for the district. It's a moving target. And as soon as we buy a piece of pipe to push data through, we need a bigger pipe. And I just appreciate you thinking kind of outside the box to get a solution to the problem, and especially listening to the Technology Advisory Committee, because that's a dedicated group of people who really have wrapped their hands around technology in the district and have made strong recommendations that we need a director of technology. And I just appreciate that you've listened to them and you've tried to find a flexible way to get us a good solution. And I think we're going to get there, and I think it's because of your leadership on it. The other thing is that I look forward to, if we're able to get this through, if we're able to pass it and find a candidate and then agree on how much that candidate deserves to get paid, etc. I look forward to this also freeing up current staff for being able to do the jobs they were hired to do in their old job descriptions. Because I just appreciate all the work that Ed has done, and Lorene, and Kathy, and Brian, to you know, for our Band-Aid approach to handling technology. So I think this is a great job on your part, and again, appreciating all the efforts of all our directors. I think this can be a real win-win for us and Moraga, and especially for our students, our kids. So thank you very much, Joe.
Questions from the board?
I agree, Matt, really good comments. I definitely agree, and I'm excited for this. But do you think this will have sort of an immediate impact on our next contract with IT, or do you think that's something?
Yes.
Yes.
It will, and I think we are making plans behind the scenes to affect that with our next contract, so we can incorporate the savings from the contract.
And the contract come up
Right now.
Right now.
So we will be taking steps to see, you know, how we can, if this passes and we can go forward. Of course, we have to wait and see if we hire somebody. We want to try some contract work with them, and we've actually had, our staff has had some discussions with them already, and they, you know, they're amenable to, they recognize the need of this area too. So.
Okay. And then I just had a couple of minor, small questions about some of the changes that were in there. So on page 76, I actually noticed this language last time, I didn't say anything, but when we talk about appropriate technology, and I see, you know, some of the language was added to sort of define that a little bit, but who's going to be determining what's, you know, appropriate? Is it just going to be, you know, the two districts as a new director kind of making that decision?
Yes, and what's outlined here are the typical types of things, so we wanted to lay the range out of possibility.
I'm glad you added that in, because when I read that, I was like, what are they getting?
Yes.
Like, what did they even say? You have to buy us.
Right.
You know, who knows what. And then on the next page at the very top, adding in that sentence about Moraga being reimbursed 40% of the costs of the technology upon termination of the agreement. Should there be something in there that says that it's like the depreciated value versus, you know, because if it's a few years down the road, I mean, the value of the items might be significantly less. And if we're compensating that 40% on the original, I mean, it's not going to be seem fair to be a depreciated value.
I think they, in my discussions with them, you know, they've been very flexible about that.
Okay.
So I think they would agree that whatever the appropriate 40% charge was at the time, whether it, you know, hopefully it would be 1 year, if it was out there further, I think that would be acknowledged.
Okay. And I guess, you know, as a lawyer, I would prefer to say depreciated value or something, just to be more precise about it, to take away some, I mean, it would maybe argue to an argument about what the value is, but, okay.
I guess the worry about adding that, the word depreciated, they're really sharing the upfront costs of whatever technology that was used from day one. They're just doing it in arrears, right, at time of termination. So the way I thought about it was actually better it's written like this, so that we get 40% of the dollar spent, call it next year, in 3 years from now, or 10 years from now, or whatever it is.
Well, they're paying their share up front, right, and then it's just returns.
So I wanted to also add that I'm really glad to see this, because I know we've needed this position for a long time. And I also have just a minor question on page 77, number 6, duties. It says the district shall jointly prepare a common job description, and that's, but just since technology changes so much, what if a year or two down the line, we needed to change slightly what we need this person to do versus Moraga? If it's a common job description, do you have built in to reevaluate that at some point?
Well, that's, yeah, that goes without saying. As we put together the common job description as a separate item, then both districts would have to get together to agree, and we have that ability in here to make agreements on the schedule, on the job description, on anything affecting the job. So we would get back together and propose any needed changes. Typically, typically the job descriptions there would have to be some significant change in order for us to change, because it's usually general enough to encompass what we usually run into. You know, if we ask to do something major different, then that would require a change.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions from the board? Any comments from the public on this item?
Okay, President. On page 76, number 2, interview, the district shall form a joint committee. OEA is requesting that a member or 2 be on that joint committee to hire a tech director. So we'd appreciate being a part of that process. Thank you.
Other comments from the public? Seeing none? Further discussion from the board?
Well, I didn't see exactly where Charles was referring to, but, oh, number 2, okay. So maybe Joe could explain how that committee would be formed and who would be on the committee, because I do think that's important to have some staff on the committee, I mean, school site staff as opposed to district staff.
So all of our hirings for positions like that have representation. We would be following the same pattern that we have in the past, which has representatives from all the various strata of employees, certificated, classified, administrative, and then both districts have the same combined. We would be combining from each district those categories.
Do we have someone from OCAP on there, or
Yes, we've actually talked about having a representative from those.
does Moraga have a similar?
No, they don't have a separate committee, but we discussed that. It'll be a big committee.
Sounds like a big
Good
committee.
luck with that.
Yes.
Discussion, or if we have a motion?
I move that we approve action item B, OUSD and Moraga School District Joint Employment Agreement, Director of Technology.
Second?
All All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That was passed unanimous. Next, Brian, job description, director of technology.
All right, so the technology director job description, the agenda bill is basically the same, just seeking your approval for the job description. The only substantive change on the entire job description is the bottom of page 2. Trustee Moran, at our last month's meeting, commented on the only notice that there's some type of joint work together is in this area. In the new job description updated, it's actually only Orinda, as we are the employing agency. So Orinda Union School District would be ensuring that the candidate is subjected to non-discrimination, as well as ensuring that they follow non-discrimination procedures. So the only difference is it doesn't say school districts, and it doesn't say Orinda Union and Moraga School District. We're the employing agency, so it only says Orinda.
But you were saying that in the
Posting.
notice postings that go out, that
The
it's
posting, yes.
clear that it is both.
Is
It's
a
not
joint,
taking anyone by surprise.
correct, yeah. Notification that it's a joint role,
Right, but since we're the employer.
correct.
Other questions on this? Any comments from the public on this item? Charles?
Charles Shannon, President. I just want to make sure that in the responsibilities that there are site visits that happen periodically throughout the year. I think that's very important for them to see how technology is being utilized and to check in with those that are in direct, providing instruction to our students that they see firsthand what's going on in the classroom. So thank you.
Comments on this item? Further discussion on this item?
When we look down at duties and responsibilities under number 3, I think it's embedded in here that the director of technology will be working at school sites, providing leadership to teaching staff, and best use of technology to support student learning. That's just my opinion.
Other comments? Or discussion on this item? No, there's a motion.
I move that we approve action item C, job description, director of technology.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimous. Okay, action item D, deletion of board policy 3111, deferred maintenance funds. Orinda.
Assembly Bill 97 redirected deferred maintenance funds into the new funding model, which is now referred to as the worker control funding formula. With this funding change, the OUSD board policy 3111 has become obsolete. So CSBA is recommending that school districts delete this policy as it references a former funding source. So the action being requested tonight is to authorize the deletion of board policy 3111.
Thank you. Any questions on this?
Lorraine, I guess the only question I have, and maybe the superintendent, if this is deleted in May right now, May 13th, and we're still looking at different things that with reference to this year's budget, right? I don't know, is this something that we want to delete as of when the LCAP is actually completely taken over, as opposed to the tier 3? I don't know, it's more of a timeline of when it becomes truly obsolete.
So, yeah, I think it already has been. It already is obsolete. You want to comment any further on that?
When the Tier 3 came into play back in like 2008-9, that's when the deferred maintenance program was no longer the deferred maintenance program, was being flexed. And so as of July 1st this prior year, with the introduction of the local control funding formula, the deferred maintenance program has become obsolete as of July 1st, 2013.
So because it wasn't identified in this budget year, or this planning year, right?
Right.
It's not applicable, even though we're using it for past budgets, if you will, right? The Tier 3 is still a concept that's been discussed and budgeted to.
Not this fiscal year, not in
Last
13-14.
So on audits and everything else, they just look backwards at what was in place then.
Correct. Right, so for 13-14, it doesn't exist.
So I have a question. We talked about, during our facilities discussion, we talked about setting aside money for the deferred maintenance, basically. So if we did that, would this apply, or is that, or not, because it is our own funds and it's not a category?
If we set money aside for our own deferred maintenance needs, it would be locally restricted. And this refers to the state program, the state-funded program, which now no longer exists.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board? Any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none. Further discussion from the board? Or,
Will we delete board policy 3111, deferred maintenance?
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passed and was unanimous. And then Lorraine, action item E, resolution 1413, authorizing issuance of district CAL card visa.
So the OUSD Board of Trustees previously authorized district staff to acquire procurement cards for district use. The cards, we currently have several cards, but we no longer have a Visa or a MasterCard. We have gas cards, Safeway card, those types of procurement cards. So the state of California offers a program which is referred to as the Cal Card. You may have heard of the Cal Card, which is administered through U.S. Bank. The contract is only available to governmental agencies. And under the program, there's no administrative fee. There's a 45-day payment cycle. There's no finance charges. Your monthly finance charge would equal less than $75 per invoice. There's volume incentives and rebates that are allowed under the program, and the users are locally monitored for usage and limits per card. We would have the ability to monitor that in-house rather than having to go through a third party to do that. So the cards would be used for emergency purchases, securing purchases from online vendors, and securing travel arrangements. Some of the advantages would include, in case of emergencies, and when we are unable to have access to our purchase order system or our POs, and we would be able to make emergency purchases using the card. We have several vendors that we currently would like to have to use as vendors, but we're not allowed. We don't have a mechanism to do that because we don't have Visa. A lot of the online vendors don't take purchase orders. They will only take Visa for those types of transactions, and this would help to reduce the employee out-of-pocket reimbursements because of the online having to purchase directly out of pocket because we do not have a district Visa. Even some of our annual contracts that we renew take Visa only. And so in those situations, an employee has to use their personal Visa card and then be reimbursed because of the move to online purchases. So we're requesting that the board authorize the procurement card or contract with CalCard through US Bank.
Questions from the board?
Yeah, one of my concerns, Lorene, is that this is going to create more work for people in the business office to monitor this stuff. So in looking at the resolution, getting down to the last three whereases, will designate and delegate to business services staff access to the account to make purchases on behalf of the district. So I guess my question on that one is, does that mean that employees aren't going to be carrying one in their pocket? They're going to have to go to staff to access it?
No, I would envision the CAL cards remaining in the safe at all times.
Okay.
And only the district office staff would have access to utilize the numbers and that type of thing. But
Okay.
they would be secure in the office.
Okay. So do you see this as a significant potentially piece of work that's going to fall on business services staff?
I don't believe it will increase the workload because I don't anticipate the frequency being that often.
Okay.
But we do run into a lot of hurdles with trying to secure purchases that this would assist with. And as part of our emergency preparedness planning, if we were in a situation where we didn't have access to our computers or the availability to issue a purchase order, we don't have any mechanism to go to OSH and buy supplies or first aid supplies. We don't have a district authorized way to handle emergency purchases.
Okay.
This would come in handy for that.
Great, thank you.
So when, I guess just functional, trying to understand this, would you then, or business office, be responsible for like coding this out every month when it comes in? And so you, like if you gave it to someone to use, I mean, is there a protocol that will be in place, like some, in essence, it's kind of the reverse of what I heard it takes the place of, in the sense of, I go out, buy something, turn in my expense reimbursement. This is more like, I come to Lorraine, ask for the use of the card for said, whatever it is, under such and such code. So is it the same amount of work for each employee that it's just taking the, I guess, the reimbursement back end out of the situation and having it be upfront? Or?
The cards are issued in an individual's name, and so the cards could not be checked out unless it was the one or the two individuals whose name is on the card. So the way I envision this happening is a lot of times, mostly in software or online purchasing for example, we've had situations where vendors are offering really good prices, but you can only purchase it online with a Visa. So I'm envisioning the requisitions coming in for that type of purchase, and then the purchase be converted over to a reimbursement to the Visa card, and the Visa card being used to secure the purchase. That would be handled in-house, whereas now it usually gets bogged down because we can't issue the PO because they won't take the purchase order. There's a lot of kind of scrambling that goes on to try to figure out a better way to do it. We don't like employees to be out of pocket. So it kind of comes down to you either have to reimburse the employee or they can't get that pricing. So that's kind of the hurdles that we're running into right now. And we're seeing more and more of that because of good pricing out there, but most of it's online.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense to me just from I've seen a similar levels of headaches where you don't know the amount and you can't cut a check,
Right.
or they won't take a PO,
Right.
and
Right.
putting an employee's credit card limit isn't really one. There's audit trail issues, but then there's also just inherently maxing people's cards out is not really a business practice.
And with the CalCard, they do offer statements per card, so it really is broken out. The transactions are broken out very nicely by the card that was used. And we have the availability to limit the types of purchases on the card. For example, if someone were to take it to a conference, you could limit it to no gas, you could actually earmark the only types of expenditures that the card could be used for. So the CalCard has some really nice features to it. I'm not promoting taking the card out on a conference, but as an example, they do have some really strict ways to monitor the usage of the CalCards under this program, because it is a government-sponsored program.
Would those expenses come, those charges come in, would the board be seeing that under the warrants? Or would it have its own separate thing, or would it just be like sort of mixed in with?
They would all be payable to US Bank as part of the CalCard. So it's just like if you have your own Visa card at home, and you make a payment to whatever
So it'd just
credit
be
card
one-
company it
wouldn't
is.
be- Would just be one line for that month's?
It would be one check, but it would be likely that there would be a line item per purchase, because potentially it would be different departments or.
It'd be coded out on the warrants.
Right,
Yeah.
there would be detail. The detail of the charges would be reflected in the printouts that you receive. Kind of like Office Depot, where you have one vendor, but you've got all these lines that list out what happened. It would be similar to that.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, there are safeguards in place that something like that
Right.
couldn't be misused.
Right.
So you'd have it limited to 2 individuals and kept in a safe.
Right. Each card has a limit, we set the limit.
Okay.
We can set the number of transactions per month. There's a lot of control, and it's locally defined control. It's not the agency that does it, it's the individual holder of the card.
And can you set it to have like alerts, just like my credit card, where you have alerts set for, purchases over a certain amount, you know what I mean? How you can like,
You can,
sort of get
Notifications.
get on, right, so to get information regularly on, purchases, I guess.
yes, you can. And if I worked in districts where we had a CalCard and we had a big purchase for a big travel expenditure that like countywide teachers were attending. We were able to go in and increase the limit on the CalCard so that that transaction could go through. It went through, we lowered the limit locally so that we're able to do that. And we can terminate someone's card in-house if there's abuse. So we have that ability to monitor all of the aspects of the transactions on the credit card.
Why did the prior administration have one, why haven't we had one under this? I just saw you said previous to the current administration, the district had.
I'm not sure why the current administration didn't want to continue with the use of a Visa, district-sponsored Visa card. I'm not sure. I did check with accounts payable and there wasn't a problem with it, so it's not that there was a problem tracking down receipts or there wasn't a reason. The reason didn't come from the business office.
I like the idea of having emergency purchases more accessible. That's the one thing that stands out for me, it's just that flexibility.
Any comments from the public on this item? Charles?
Charles Shannon, President. With teachers having out-of-pocket expenses because of the reimbursement process taking time, I don't know if principals being included in having names on CalCards as well, but there are times when our out-of-pocket expenses are not reimbursed quickly, and we potentially incur additional costs to do our job. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. I don't know. I again, the principals will also have a card in a safe they can use for emergency purchases to cover the teacher supply budget on occasion.
Other comments from the public?
I have another question. Is there a maximum amount, you know, like just like a credit line for this or something, maximum amount? And if so, I was thinking of it as just for district office purchases, but as he pointed out, what if, you know, is this something that principals would have access to in some way for their school site purchases?
At this time, we're not entertaining getting Cal cards for employees other than the 2 district office designated cards. That's something we could look into as we test out the success of the cards. But at this time, we're not requesting that all administrators receive a copy.
Well, whether they have a card or not, if there's a, although I'm not sure if you use purchase orders, I'm thinking of things like the professional development, and you have Columbia, and you have teachers that have to go there, and all those kind of things. Anything that's done quickly, maybe it's to, you know, if there's time where you can't do a purchase order, it seems like maybe that's a time where this credit card thing, this Cal card, would be appropriate. And is that something where the principal could contact the district office and have that arranged to be used, or does that not apply? And is that something you would use a purchase order for?
If we were making travel arrangements, such as the airfare or hotel, we could definitely use the Cal card for that purpose. If they're leaving to go on a conference, they wouldn't be able to take the card with them. So the day-to-day expenses wouldn't be eligible for that. But if we know in advance and we can purchase airfare or secure the hotel, a lot of times what I've done in previous districts with hotels is we will secure the hotel accommodation with the Cal card, but then issue a check directly to the hotel in advance of the conference. So then the hotel costs are covered upon arrival, and then there's no personal out of pocket for that portion. But you have to use a credit card to secure a hotel in advance.
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of catch-22s.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it would be useful in those times. Yeah, I think it makes sense. So, thank you.
Is there discussion from the board or motion on this item?
Move we approve Resolution 1413, authorizing issuance of district Cal card Visa.
Second. This is a roll call vote.
Yes?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay, so on the consent calendar, item A, the minutes. Sarah, do you have a question?
Yeah, no, I wanted to recommend a modification or a revision to 2 of the items. And I also just want to make a comment on a 3rd item. I'm not sure how you want to do this. There's the 2 items with the contract, on page 2 and 3. I wanted to recommend that we add a clarifying phrase on each of those. And I wanted to state for the record on page 1, report out, take action on closed session items. That description, I don't feel that the entire amount of wording there is entirely accurate as to that item. The phrase I feel like is not entirely accurate was, and to uphold the district's decision and findings, as it's part of the entire sentence. And I think it implies a lot there. So that's, I just want to make that statement. So why don't we turn to page 2? I wanted to recommend that we have a revision of action item number 75-14, contract with Cal Engineering and Geology for repair of Wagner Ranch Playground. The next sentence, Mr. Silva's Director of Facilities presented the contract for, I think the phrase should be added there, engineering and project management of the repair of the Wagner Ranch Playground. I think that's important because the way it's worded here sounds like the contract is to repair the playground, when in fact it's not, it's just to do the engineering work. So I think it's very important that that's clear and that that phrase would clarify that. The next item, I should explain this all at once, Chris? Sure. The next item, action item number 76-14 on the next page, that's page 3. Contract with HY Architects for re-roofing projects. It's the same issue. So the sentence that says, Mr. Silva's Director of Facilities presented the contract for the re-roofing projects at Wagner Ranch, LAS, and Del Rey. I think right before re-roofing, it should add the phrase, presented the contract for the project management of the re-roofing. It's the same issue. That contract is just for the project management and the entire re-roofing. It will be an additional contract later for a much larger amount. So I think by adding those 4 words there, that would clarify that that's just for the project management of that project. So you want me to make a motion? Or do you want to ask for a discussion?
But, we need to have discussion and public comments and whatnot. Comments on that? Is there any public discussion on this item? Charles?
I'm just recognizing the public that I saw some heads going back and forth. So I think there needs to be some discussion from maybe a director on this. I'm not real clear on here what the issue is, but I saw some body language. It seems like maybe a director wants to speak on this issue.
Other comments from the public?
So are you just talking about action items 76-14 and 75-14, or did you give up the other on the first page?
I made a comment. That was a personal comment. I don't know that
So you're just asking for a change on,
I'm asking for the change on page 2, that item on 2, and then page 3, the 2 contracts, 75-14, and just those phrases to clarify. I just feel like that's important because otherwise it implies it's to do the entire project, which is clearly not. It's to do the engineering or project management. If anyone wants to tweak my suggested wording, that's fine, but I think the way it stands now, it reads as if we approved the contract to do the entire project, which is not the case. And I think minutes need to reflect, to be accurate to what we're doing, so. I think it's a pretty straightforward, simple thing. If you want me to read it again, I can.
I guess I would say I'm pretty comfortable with the language as is. I mean, the bold-faced line tracks the language of what we voted on last month.
Yeah.
And then the sub-wording again, I think is, to me, I don't have an issue with the contract language. I mean, it's CLAD Engineering and Geology, and it's HY Architects.
Yeah, so if you look on item 76-14, contract with HY Architects for re-roofing projects. The next line, Mr. Silva's Director of Facilities presents the contract for re-roofing projects. It sounds like that is to re-roof all those projects, Wagner Ranch, LAS, and Del Rey, when in fact it's not that at all.
There's a contract with the architects.
Yeah, but I mean, you're assuming people understand all these things. That one does say architects. I mean, I didn't feel that the agenda items were that clearly worded in the previous, board packet, but we did have explanation from Ed, and if you put it all together, you can figure it out. But when you have minutes, I just think it doesn't take that much to add a phrase, and that will clarify that this is for the project management of the project.
Both of these were more design than execution oriented too, I believe.
Yeah, and in the board packet, it stated the amount, like the first one, contract with Cal Engineering, it stated it was $19,630. Unless you go to our facilities list, you wouldn't realize that to do the entire project, it was over $100,000, and that this was just the engineering part. And so I think it's, unfortunate to always expect the public to read this, read that, read all these different documents. If anyone wasn't at the meeting and they wanted to understand, wait a minute, when did we approve what? You wouldn't be able to put it together unless you really had a good understanding of it all. And just to add that phrase clarifies a whole lot, because in fact it is just for the engineering of it and not to do the work of the project itself. That's going to come back at a later time.
Other thoughts on this item?
So it seems like we have a board protocol that if we have an issue with an item on consent, we talk to the superintendent about it on the Monday at the board meeting. Do you do that?
Yes, I did
Good,
that.
thank you.
I see the clarification. I mean, it's just more information. Having lived those two action items, I definitely know more about them than somebody reading just the minutes. So I can see where the design piece is definitely not the 1.5 million on the re-roofing and the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for Cal Engineering implementation of their design, which will be downstream as well. I can go either way.
I guess I see it as, the minutes reflect action taken, and, we approved the contract, and our minutes, for better or for worse, have never delved into high amount of discussion of what I know Tyson's had an issue at several years ago, but they never have. So I am personally fine with this language, but
well, I guess I just look at it as if anyone out there is reading just these minutes, right now we're going to be spending so much money, in essence, through contracts on facilities-minded deals. A little more clarity won't hurt. If we had a place where we had an actual posting of what we've approved and how it's been spent, it might provide the clarity that the minutes don't, but we don't right now. And that's maybe a discussion item later in the packet.
Yeah,
like I said, I know what they're for, so.
Yeah, but these aren't meant for you to be written for people who weren't here at the meeting. I don't know, I just think it's four words here: project management of, engineering and project management of, clarifies a lot.
okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we adopt the minutes of April 14th with 2 revisions. The first action item, 75-14, amending the sentence, Mr. Sillis, Director of Facilities, presented the contract for engineering and project management of the repair of the Wagon Ranch Playground. And action item 76-14, amending the sentence, Mr. Sillis, Director of Facilities, presented the contract for the project management of the re-roofing projects.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed?
Opposed?
So the vote was 2 votes to 3 votes, so the motion did not pass. So,
So Butler and Crawford.
Butler and